Ladies and gentlemen, patch point 5 has greatly changed a lot of the different weapon numbers, their cost, how good they are in certain situations. So it's only right that we make a brand new point 5 weapons tier list so that you know exactly what weapons that you should be using in every single game to give yourself the best shot at winning. If you like improving in Valorant or just like to be caught up on Valorant information, do yourself a favor, smash that subscribe button. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, so don't miss out on a single one. Anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? So kicking it off with the S tier. These are the best of the best guns throughout the entire game that you should probably be playing with whenever you get the chance to. So kicking it off with the first two weapons that you know are going to be on the S tier list is the Vandal and the Phantom. Now, some important information about the Vandal and the Phantom is that their tap efficiency is up and their gun recovery time is lower. All you need to know about this in a nutshell is that tapping or burst firing is going to be far more effective, which is just a buff to the ARs altogether, which is great. Now, while you know that both of these guns are in the S tier, many people ask the question, what is the better one of these two guns? What's the gun that I should be picking because they both cost the same? Should I be playing with the Vandal or should I be playing with the Phantom? Well, in order to make that decision, you have to weigh the pros and cons and then apply them to your situation. The Vandal is not silenced, however, it one-shot headshots from a lot farther distance away at 50 meters, as opposed to the Phantom, which won't one-shot headshot after that 15 meters, but the Phantom is silenced and has 5 more rounds in the magazine. Now, what that means is that if you're taking a close-range fight, the Phantom is always going to be better with the silencer and the extended clip, but if you're planning to engage long sightlines, then the Vandal is going to be better for you all in all. If I want to go to a point and we're planning to challenge something like Heaven, which is pretty far away, I don't want to be caught with the Phantom and headshot the enemy and them not dying. It's happened many times in the past, but if you had the Vandal, it would just end the fight right there. So you need to be thinking about your situation, and then of course, personal preference plays a huge role in this, which I know no one wants to hear, but it's the truth. Personal preference and playstyle plays a giant role in whether or not you should pick the Phantom or the Vandal. Now, moving on to the next gun in the S tier is the Ghost Pistol. Everyone knows just how essential the Ghost Pistol is. It's almost always the first round buy on econ rounds, and when you're trying to save money, it could even be worth it to buy a Ghost Pistol, assuming that even if you lose, you could still buy the full armor and the good weapon for the preceding round. Ghost Pistols are pretty good because they can one-shot headshot if someone has no armor, and they're pinpoint accurate as long as you're walking, so the Ghost is pretty much just a shoo-in for one of the best guns in the entire game at its given price point. You should almost always be rocking the Ghost, and I would highly suggest rocking it more often than not compared to the Sheriff, because everyone seems to be buying the Sheriff when the Ghost can get the job done all the same. Now, rotating on to the next gun on the list for the S tier is the Operator. Now, we're not quite sure the full implications for a lot of these gun changes that are going through. A lot of the different changes as far as the dead zone accuracy decrease and other factors like that. However, strong entry tested has pointed to it making the Operator slightly easier to use. And by my extremely anecdotal 4K with an Operator last night, I'm going to say that that's true. So I'm definitely going to keep it in the S tier here. But for real, joking aside, Operator can one-shot body shot. It's an insanely powerful weapon. However, it's not as powerful as it used to be in my mind because remember, the econ cap is only 9,000 as opposed to that 12,000 it was before. It makes it a lot harder justifying an Operator because, as you know, at 4,500 credits, 2 of these together is the full amount of money you could save. So I do think that more often than not, Operators shouldn't be something that you just spam buy. You should be buying it if you are the appropriate class to be opping and not just waste your money just because you can on an Operator. Now, moving on to the last gun in S tier, we have the SPECTRE, and in my mind, the SPECTRE is just one of the best guns in the game. It's extremely cheap at only 1,600 creds, and it gets the job done from that close range. It is silenced, it has good magazine size, it can burst people pretty fast, and you can win a lot of matchups against much more expensive weapons, especially if you're within that close range. SPECTRE is just one of the best weapons for forced buy rounds or rounds where you're behind your economy of your team, but you need to buy anyways, and it can be the best weapon to buy right off the bat. If you won the first round and you have a slight advantage, you can buy the SPECTRE in full armor, rush at enemies, and if they have pistols, they're just going to get annihilated by your SPECTRE's power level. Now let's rotate on to the A tier, weapons that are extremely good, but they don't quite reach the power level or the necessity of the first S tier weapons, but they're still very powerful and you should definitely be using them in the right scenarios. Now, the first weapon on the A tier list is the Bulldog. Now, as you know, just like the Vandal and the Phantom, the gun recovery time for the Bulldog is actually a lot better, which means that burst fire or tap firing it without the scope, not aiming down the sight, is going to be a lot better, which means that the Bulldog is a pretty good weapon and it's versatile all the way from close range to farther away. I definitely think that I slept on the Bulldog initially because I thought that it was kind of weird. It was a little tricky between the scope, zoom in, and not zooming in, but the true power level in my mind with the Bulldog is just not zooming in and just using it from the hip. The Bulldog is very powerful, and this buff is just icing on the cake. And the fact that it's so cheap at only 2,100 credits means that the Bulldog is in the perfect price point sometimes to get everything you need: full armor, a Bulldog, and all your abilities. Now moving on to the next weapon we have in the A tier, we actually have the Marshal. Now the Marshal Sniper, it might seem weird to put this so high up, but in my opinion, it's one of the best weapons you could buy during an eco round or to surprise the enemy. Marshal has the potential to win matchups against every single gun in the game if you can hit your headshot. And on top of that, you can one-shot body shot people if they don't wear any armor. So if you win the first round and you're holding a long sightline, maybe you don't want to be buying the Spectre, but instead you buy a Marshal and hold that sightline and get some free kills in because the enemies aren't going to be buying armor. And of course, the most important factor about the Marshal that we can't forget is just how dang cheap it is. I mean, it's so cheap with the ability to one-shot headshot people and kill them instantly. I definitely wouldn't sleep on the Marshal, and you would do yourself a favor becoming a god with this weapon. Now, let's talk about the next weapon on the A tier list, which is the Guardian. Now, in my opinion, I actually put the Guardian too high initially. I do think that the Guardian is the weapon that people that weren't familiar with the gunplay mechanics of controlling your spread from CSGO really flocked to. They had a lot of success with the Guardian because there's not really that same level of control that you have to have with the Vandom or the Phantom. Now, the Guardian did get a buff as well with the gun recovery time, so it will just be more accurate when firing more shots in succession, which is all great for the gun. I definitely think that the fact that this gun can one-shot headshot means if you have the aim for it, it's extremely good in a lot of different situations. However, the biggest knock to the Guardian in my mind is the fact that it's almost as much as the Vandal and the Phantom, only 200 credits less. And I do think that it's not as versatile, it's not as good as 1v1 fights, and I probably wouldn't want to be swinging with it in the same way that you swing around corners with the Vandal or a Phantom. So for those reasons alone, it's only in the A tier and not in the S tier, even though it's a pretty powerful gun. Now moving on to the last weapon in the A tier, we have the Sheriff Pistol. And I almost put this weapon in the B tier because it's been under impressive. That being said, if you're in the proper ranges of the Sheriff, you can win a lot of matchups against better guns for a very cheap price. And that cannot be underestimated because sometimes you might be on an eco round, but you popped off, you have a little bit of extra money, and you want to give yourself a gun that has a chance to outplay your enemies if you catch them by surprise or if you peek an angle well, and you could just win the game. And I think that the Sheriff gives you that opportunity. It gives you that potential if you have the mechanical skill behind it. So I do think it has a little bit of an X factor in that regard. And while I don't necessarily like the gun that much, the fact that it's only $800 and it can win matchups against better guns kind of makes me feel like it's similar to the Marshal in that regard, where it deserves some recognition, and as such, it deserves a spot in the A tier. Now moving on to the B tier, these guns are very good, but they're situational. Each one of them has a certain situation and place where you can use them. Maybe it's a map or a place you're holding, or it's in a very specific situation that you should whip these out. So while they're by no means bad, there's just specific scenarios where you need to be thinking about how to use them. So first off, all three shotguns are in the B tier, and they go in this order: Shorty, Judge, and Bucky. Now, the Shorty is at the top of my B tier list, and you might be pretty surprised by that. But the thing is, the Shorty has a job, and it does it very well for very cheap. Shorty can easily one-shot people, you can get 2 kills with it, you can steal someone's gun and come out of the corner and kill them very easily, and it's only 200 credits. The fact is, what Shorty players want to do is be hiding around corners, setting up scenarios where they literally run, jump at an enemy and just kill them, steal their gun, and then they trade it up very easily. They got a kill or they traded kills. Now, you could be in big trouble if you try to set up a play like this and no one comes around, you don't get that kill, and then you're stuck trying to fight enemies from longer ranges with the Shorty. But like I said, 200 credits, it's very cheap, and I have consistently rated guns highly that can trade up in value, and Shorty is the perfect example of that. For so cheap, it could get so much done. You could even get a double kill in some scenarios, and that's crazy for a $200 weapon. Now, moving on to the next shotgun we have on our list, we have the Judge. Now, I think the Judge is frankly insane. If you get anyone close range, its fire can just tear them up. You can get 1 kill after the next and just tear up the enemy. Kill after kill after kill if enemies getting close to you. The biggest problem I have with the Judge, besides its effective range, of course, is just the fact that it has to compete with the Spectre, which I think is such a powerful gun. I've rated it in S tier. So you have to think about that is really what's holding the Judge down. For 1,500 credits for the Judge and 1,600 credits for the Spectre, I'm going to be hard-pressed to pick up the Judge unless I'm really trying to surprise the enemy or I have some reason to bring the enemy in close. Let's say maybe I'm playing a Cypher and I have a trap wire set around the corner. Enemies run in, I rush at them with the Judge, and I can jump and push in really aggressively and still hit hit my shots. That is an example where I'd probably whip out the Judge, but more often than not, I'm going to be playing the Spectre, and that's why the Judge is so low on this list. Now, last in the B tier for shotguns is the Bucky, and I think that the Bucky is a little bit underrated. At 900 credits, it can still one-shot body shot, and it can one-shot from longer ranges away with that converging bullet spread that if you get just right, you can easily kill people from longer distances away. I do think its biggest downside is the fact that its fire rate is so slow, and with the speed and pace of some of the fights, if you don't kill them with that first shot, sometimes you won't be alive to get that second shot. So that's just something to keep in mind. I feel like sometimes you have to use the Bucky in the same way that you use the Shorty, where you kind of get people by surprise. And if that's the case, why not just use a Shorty or some other gun? I do think that the Bucky's more versatile and it's cheap. But like I said, I don't think that it's the best shotgun out of the list. I think it's the weakest shotgun, but not weak by any means. And then last in the B tier, I'm actually putting the Ares in the B tier when I put it really low before. You got to remember that the Ares actually got a pretty sizable change. It went from 1,700 credits to 1,600 credits, and the amount of recoil plus bullet spread got changed on the Ares. It was already a pretty underrated gun, and I think it was pretty good. But now it's even better for some of those eco rounds where you're a little bit ahead on your teammates in money. You want to buy a gun that's really good at wall banging, has a lot of ammo to work with. I think that the Ares is a really good weapon for that scenario. You can clear out rooms pretty easily, especially something like hookah on bind. So I do think it has its uses, and I do like that they buffed this gun because now it's in B tier, and it's a gun that you might want to experiment with in your games every once in a while. Now, last but certainly not least, in the B tier is the Frenzy. Now, the Frenzy, in my opinion, is only at the bottom of B tier because it kind of does something similar to the Shorty, right? You push out by surprise, you manage to get a kill, and you steal their gun. The problem in my mind with the Frenzy is that it's more expensive than the Shorty. I like the fact that the Shorty is so cheap and you could do something very similar. Now, the Frenzy does have more ammo and more range, but it's not that accurate by any means, and I do think that it's at the bottom of the B tier, even though you can use it in the same way that the Shorty is used for, and if you personally like the gun, don't be afraid to use it if you just want to try to steal someone else's gun, catch them by surprise, get some free value in. Now let's move on to the last section, which is the C tier, and this one might be a little bit controversial, but the best gun I have in C tier is actually the Stinger. A lot of people have stated that they like the Stinger, and in my personal experience, every time I've tried it or seen high-level players play with it, it's just underperformed again and again. It's a pretty expensive gun for how little it brings to the table. It really feels like a slightly buffed version of the Frenzy. I don't like its clip size. I don't like its accuracy. I think there's better guns you could pick from for around the same price. I mean, honestly, I would rather use the Sheriff than this gun easily in any single situation, and I'm being serious about that. So if you really like the style of full auto and you like getting up close and personal and you want a little bit more power than the Frenzy, like you like the Frenzy but you want a little bit more power level, I could see maybe some niche scenarios where you want to buy the Stinger, but personally I would not be using this gun at all. Now, last but certainly least is the Odin. Now, Odin didn't get a buff. It did get a buff. Its recoil is not as bad as it was before. It got that same buff that the Ares did. However, its price hasn't changed at all. The problem I have with the Odin is that it's 3,200 credits. You can't really justify in the same way that you justify an Ares for 1,600 creds. It's 3,200 creds and it's a full auto light machine gun. Why in the world would I ever want this gun over an assault rifle? I cannot think of very many scenarios where I would ever want the control, the one-shot capability, and the versatility of an assault rifle, and I would sacrifice all those factors to just pick up an Odin that can wallbang a little bit better and has more ammo. I frankly can't see it, and as such, I just don't see a place for the Odin, and I don't think anyone should be playing with it. If they wanted the Odin to be more viable, they most likely should have lowered its price point, and even then, I would be hesitant to use it all in all, even if it was cheaper than the Vandal and the Phantom. But being more expensive, I would not use this weapon, and I do not suggest you use it outside of very niche scenarios, or maybe your whole team wants to buy them just to troll the enemy. That's always fun. Anyways, if you like Valorant content or want constant daily updates, do yourself a favor, smash that subscribe button. Do it right now, don't wait. You never know when it's gonna disappear for good. Anyways, if you agree, disagree, want to roast my list, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I would love your feedback and criticism because it helps me become a better coach and helps me become a better content creator. Anyways, that's all we got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time,